The small scout ship shook violently as it entered Earth's atmosphere. Inside, Lyra gripped the control panel, her four-fingered hands turning pale blue with pressure. Warning lights flashed across the dashboard, bathing her silvery skin in red. System failure imminent, the ship's computer announced in a calm voice that did not match the situation. Lyra's large, almond-shaped eyes widened. "Engage emergency landing protocol," she commanded, her voice steady despite her racing heart. She had trained for this, but training and reality were very different things. The Stellian Botanical Survey had sent her to Earth to collect plant samples from this developing world with strict orders. No contact with humans. Earth was under protection status. Observe only, never engage. Her people had watched humans for centuries, fascinated by their rapid development, but concerned by their warlike tendencies. The ship lurched downward, cutting through clouds as the forest below came into view. Tall green trees stretched as far as Lyra could see. "Impact in 30 seconds, the computer warned. Lyra secured her sample case and activated her adaptive camouflage suit. If she survived, the technology would help her blend in, making her appear human to any natives who might spot her. 20 seconds to impact. She closed her eyes and thought of home. The twin moons over the crystal cities of her world, her family waiting for her return in 3 cycles. 10 seconds. The trees were rushing up to meet her now. Brace 4. The impact came before the computer could finish. Metal tore and screamed as the ship carved a path through the forest. Lyra's head slammed against the panel. Something warm trickled down her face. Blue blood. The ship rolled once, twice, before coming to rest upside down in a small clearing. Silence fell, broken only by the hissing of damaged systems and the soft patter of sparks falling from torn wiring. Hours later, as the sun began to set, Lyra regained consciousness. Pain shot through her body as she unstrapped herself and fell to what was now the ceiling of the inverted craft. Her right leg wouldn't support her weight, and a deep gash ran along her side. "Computer, status report," she croaked. No response came. The ship was dead. Lyra dragged herself to the emergency compartment and retrieved a small medical kit. She applied a sealing gel to her worst wounds, but knew it was only a temporary solution. Her species healed quickly, but not that quickly. She checked her camouflage suit. The main unit sparked and fizzled in her hands, damaged beyond repair. Without it, her blue-tinted skin, reflective eyes, and delicate gills along her neck would immediately identify her as non-human. "Communication system," she asked the silent ship, habit overriding logic. She managed to reach the transmitter, only to find it crushed. No way to call home. No way to signal the main research vessel orbiting Mars. Lyra gathered what supplies she could. Emergency rations, a water purifier, and basic tools. Night was falling, and staying in the damaged ship was dangerous. Fuel could ignite, or worse, humans might discover the wreckage. Pain shot through her leg with each step as she limped away from the crash site. She needed to find shelter and clean water. The forest around her was alien, similar to the training simulations, but wildly different in all the ways that mattered. Strange sounds echoed through the trees. Small creatures scurried away as she approached. Blood dripped from her wounds, leaving a trail of blue droplets on green leaves. Her vision blurred. Each step became harder than the last. She stumbled into a small clearing beside a gentle stream. The cool water called to her, but her strength failed before she could reach it. As consciousness slipped away again, Lyra's last thought was a grim realization. She was stranded on a forbidden world, alone and injured, with no way home. In the distance, a human had seen the falling star that was her ship and was coming to investigate. Alex had been tracking a deer when the sky lit up. The bright object fell through the clouds, leaving a trail of smoke and fire before disappearing behind the distant tree line. The ground shook slightly when it hit. "That's no meteor," he muttered, shouldering his rifle. 3 years in these woods had taught Alex to mind his own business. After working as a paramedic in the city, seeing too much pain and death, he had come here to find peace. His small cabin, 20 miles from the nearest town, was his escape from the world. But curiosity pulled at him. By the time he reached the crash site, the sun was beginning to set. What he found made him freeze in his tracks. Metal pieces were scattered across a long gouge in the earth. The main part of what could only be a ship lay upside down, still smoking. It wasn't military. At least not any design he had ever seen. The smooth edges and strange markings looked not from Earth. Alex approached carefully, gun ready. The ship had broken open, revealing a small cockpit with a single seat. No one was inside, but something blue and wet glistened on the controls. "Hello," he called out. Only forest sounds answered him. That's when he noticed the trail, broken branches and small blue droplets leading away from the crash. Whatever had been flying the ship was injured and on the move. Alex debated what to do. The sensible choice was to leave, to call authorities. But something stopped him. If this was what he thought it was, he knew what would happen to the pilot. Labs, tests, maybe worse. "I must be crazy," he said, and began following the blue trail. It wasn't hard to track. The blue liquid, blood, stood out against the green forest floor. The trail grew heavier as he went, meaning whatever he was following was bleeding badly. The trail led to a small stream. There, collapsed on the bank, was a figure. Alex approached slowly, his heart pounding. It looked almost human, body shape similar, but wrong in subtle ways. The skin had a silvery blue tint. The face was delicate with a small nose and large eyes, now closed. Four-fingered hands lay limp at its sides. Small, gill-like slits pulsed weakly on either side of its neck. "My God," Alex whispered. She, he somehow knew, was badly hurt. A deep gash ran along her side, and her leg bent at an unnatural angle. Blue blood seeped from several wounds. Alex's paramedic training kicked in. Injured was injured, human or not. He set his gun down and knelt beside her, checking for a pulse. Her skin felt cool to the touch, but he found a heartbeat. Faster than a human's, but steady. The alien girl's eyes fluttered open for a moment. Large, silver eyes with no whites, just pupils that expanded in the fading light. She made a soft chirping sound before passing out again. Night was coming. Predators would be drawn to the blood. And if anyone else had seen the crash, they would come looking. Alex made his decision. He gathered his emergency medical kit from his pack and quickly bandaged the worst of her wounds to stop the bleeding. Then, carefully, he lifted the alien girl in his arms. She was lighter than she looked, almost weightless. "Hang on," he told her, though he knew she couldn't understand. "My cabin's about 3 miles from here. You'll be safe there." As he carried her through the darkening forest, Alex realized his quiet life had just become very complicated. He had no idea what she was or where she had come from. He only knew she needed help, and for some reason, he felt responsible for her. The stars began to appear overhead as Alex walked steadily through the woods, carrying the injured alien girl toward the only safe place he could think of. Home. Lyra woke with a start, her large silver eyes flying open. She was in a small wooden room, lying on something soft. Pain throbbed through her body, but her wounds were covered with strange white material. Bandages, her research told her. Human medical care. Human. The word sparked panic in her mind. She tried to sit up but fell back with a cry of pain. The door to the room opened, and there he stood, a human male. Tall, with tan skin and dark hair that fell across his forehead. His eyes were a deep green, watching her with concern. Lyra pressed herself against the wall, her breathing fast. The human had found her. Her mission was compromised. Everything she had been taught about humans raced through her mind. Dangerous, unpredictable, primitive. The human raised his hands, showing empty palms. A peace gesture. He spoke, his voice low and calm, but the words meant nothing to her. Her translator had been damaged in the crash. He moved slowly to a table and picked up a bowl, then brought it to her. Water. He was offering her water. Lyra hesitated, then took the bowl with shaking hands. Her thirst won over her fear. The human nodded and stepped back, giving her space. For 3 days, they lived in this careful dance. The human, who pointed to himself and said, "Alex," many times, tended her wounds. He brought her food that she could barely eat, her system not designed for Earth nutrition. He never tried to harm her, never called others to capture her. On the 4th day, Alex brought paper and a stick that made marks. He drew a simple picture of himself, then one of her. He pointed to his drawing, then to himself, then to her drawing, and to her. Lyra understood. He wanted to communicate. She took the marking stick, a pencil, she would later learn, and drew her ship. Then the crash. Then herself, injured. She pointed to the sky, trying to explain she came from the stars. Alex's eyes widened. He nodded slowly, then pointed up as well. He understood. Over the next weeks, as Lyra's body healed, they created their own language of pictures and gestures. Alex learned that touching his forehead meant she was trying to think of how to explain something. Lyra learned that when Alex rubbed the back of his neck, he was uncomfortable or uncertain. She watched him when he thought she wasn't looking. The careful way he changed her bandages, never touching her more than necessary. The small cabin he kept clean and organized. The books he read by firelight. Everything she had been taught about humans being primitive seemed wrong. Yes, his technology was simple compared to hers, but there was a gentleness to him that surprised her. One night, as rain pounded on the roof, Alex showed her pictures of the city he had come from. Tall buildings and many humans. He made gestures of people sick or hurt, then pointed to himself helping them. A healer, then. But his face grew sad when he showed these pictures. Lyra found herself wanting to understand why. She worked on her damaged translator whenever Alex slept. The tiny device, normally worn near her ear, had been crushed in the crash. With tools borrowed from Alex's workbench, she slowly repaired its circuits. When Alex returned from hunting one day, Lyra stood shakily on her healing leg. She had placed the translator near her ear, hoping it would work. "Thank you," she said, the first word she had spoken that he could understand. "For saving me." Alex dropped the rabbits he had caught, his green eyes wide with shock. "You can talk?" he asked. Lyra smiled for the first time since the crash. "I can now," she replied. "So your people have been watching Earth for how long?" Alex asked, stirring the stew that bubbled over the fire. 2 weeks had passed since Lyra's translator began working. Now they talked for hours each day, fascinated by each other's worlds. "Over 300 of your years," Lyra replied. She sat at the small wooden table, her leg nearly healed. "We call Earth a developing world. My people believe humans are not ready for contact." Alex laughed. "They might be right. We can't even get along with each other." Lyra tilted her head, a gesture Alex had come to find endearing. "That's what the reports say. But reports miss things. They don't show people like you." Alex looked away, suddenly interested in the stew. "I'm nothing special. You saved an alien you found in the woods. Most humans in our studies would have called your government." Alex served 2 bowls of stew, giving Lyra a smaller portion. Her body couldn't process much Earth food, but she was trying to adapt. "I was a paramedic, a medical worker, in the city," Alex explained. "I saw too many people die when I couldn't save them. A boy once, only 10 years old, hit by a car. I did everything right, followed every procedure. He died anyway." Lyra's silver eyes watched him carefully. "So you came to the forest. To get away from people. From failing them. Yet you didn't fail me," Lyra said softly. That night, Lyra showed Alex the star maps on her partially working datapad. She pointed to a bright star. "My home is there. We call ourselves the Stellian. Our world has 3 suns and twin moons. It must be beautiful, Alex said, his face glowing in the blue light of the star map. It is, but we've lost something your people still have. What's that? Wonder, Lyra said. We know so much that we've stopped looking up at the stars with awe. The next morning, Alex woke to find Lyra shivering, her blue skin pale and covered in sweat. When he touched her forehead, it burned with fever. Lyra, what's happening? He asked, panic in his voice. Earth, bacteria, she managed to say. My body, fighting it. Alex checked her wounds. The leg was healing well, but the gash on her side had turned an angry purple. Infection, but not like any he'd seen before. What do I do? He asked. Tell me how to help you. Lyra's eyes fluttered. My people have stronger immune systems, but Earth bacteria, new to me, need antibiotics, strong ones. Alex knew what he had to do. He gathered his emergency money from its hiding place and prepared a backpack. I need to go to town, he told her, to get medicine. It's a 4-hour walk each way. Lyra gripped his hand weakly. If humans find me. They won't, Alex promised. I'll be back before dark. Just hold on. The walk to town filled Alex with anxiety. He hadn't been around so many people in years. The small pharmacy at the edge of town was run by an old man who asked too many questions. That's strong stuff, the pharmacist said, eyeing the list Alex had written. What's it for? Bad infection, Alex muttered. Been living rough. The old man studied him for a long moment, then filled the order. Be careful with these. They're powerful. By the time Alex returned to the cabin, the sun was setting. He found Lyra where he had left her, her breathing shallow. I got the medicine, he said, preparing the injection as she had instructed. This will help. As he slid the needle into her arm, Lyra looked up at him with fevered eyes. Why do this? She whispered. Risk so much for me. Alex didn't answer right away. He wasn't sure he understood it himself. This need to protect her, to keep her safe. Because, he finally said, everyone deserves someone who won't give up on them. Lyra's hand found his, her 4 fingers twining with his 5. Different, yet somehow fitting together perfectly. The antibiotics worked. After 3 days of Alex carefully giving Lyra injections and cooling her fever with damp cloths, her color returned to its normal silvery blue. The infection in her side began to heal. You saved my life. Again, Lyra said one morning as they sat on the cabin's small porch, watching the sun rise through the trees. Alex smiled. You're healing faster than any human would. Stellian bodies repair quickly, she explained. It's why I can walk now. Their peaceful moment was interrupted by a distant sound that made Alex stand up suddenly. The whump-lump-lump of helicopter blades. That's not normal, he said, his voice tight. No one flies helicopters out here. The sound grew louder, then passed overhead. Through gaps in the trees, they saw a black helicopter moving slowly, as if searching for something. My ship, Lyra whispered. They found my ship. That night, Alex hiked to the ridge above his cabin. From there, he could see flashlights moving in the forest near the crash site, several miles away. Too many lights to be hikers or hunters. When he returned, Lyra was packing her few belongings. I have to leave, she said. If they find me, your government will take me, and they'll punish you for hiding me. We'll leave together, Alex replied. I know these woods better than anyone. There's an old trapper's cabin deeper in the mountains. No roads lead to it. We'll be safe there. Before dawn, they set out. Alex carried a heavy pack with supplies while Lyra followed, moving silently through the trees. Her alien eyes could see clearly in the dark, helping them avoid fallen logs and hidden holes. They hiked all day, stopping only briefly to rest and eat. As the sun began to set, Lyra suddenly grabbed Alex's arm. Listen, she whispered. At first, Alex heard nothing. Then he caught it. Voices, distant but coming closer. And the soft crackle of radio communication. "They're tracking us," he said. "How?" "We've been careful." Alex thought for a moment, then reached for Lyra's pack. Inside was her damaged data pad. He turned it over and found a small light blinking on its back. "It's sending out a signal," he said. "They must have equipment that can detect it." Lyra's face fell. "I didn't know. I thought it was dead except for the star maps." Alex took the data pad and looked at it, then at Lyra. "I'll lead them away. You keep going north. The cabin is maybe 2 miles that way." He pointed. "I'll meet you there." "No," Lyra protested. "We stay together." But Alex was already pulling the data pad from her hands. "I'm faster alone. I'll lose them and circle back." Before she could argue further, he kissed her forehead, a gesture that left them both surprised, and disappeared into the trees. Alex ran east, away from their planned route. The data pad clutched in his hand, he moved quickly through the forest he knew so well. Behind him, he could hear the voices change direction, following him. He ran for nearly an hour, putting distance between the search party and Lyra. When he reached a fast-moving stream, he waded in, hoping to lose any trackers. That's when the spotlight hit him from above. The helicopter had returned, its powerful beam pinning him in the water. Men in black uniforms appeared on both banks, weapons raised. "Hands up," one shouted. "Don't move." Alex raised his hand slowly, the data pad still clutched in one. A man approached, his face hidden behind tactical gear. "Where is it?" the man demanded. "Where's the alien?" "I don't know what you're talking about," Alex replied. "I found this thing in the woods, was trying to figure out what it was." The man struck Alex hard across the face. He fell to his knees in the stream, blood mixing with the cold water. "Take him," the man ordered. "He knows where it is. He'll talk eventually." As they dragged him away, Alex had only one thought. Lyra was safe. For now. Lyra reached the old trapper's cabin just as rain began to fall. The small wooden structure was weathered and dusty, but solid. She waited through the night, hoping to see Alex's familiar shape emerge from the trees. He never came. By morning, she knew something was wrong. Alex wouldn't have left her alone this long, not by choice. "They have him," she whispered to the empty cabin. "Because of me." For the first time since the crash, Lyra felt truly afraid. Not for herself, but for the human who had risked everything to help her. Her people had rules against interfering with developing worlds, but she couldn't leave Alex to whatever fate awaited him. She needed to send a message to her people. The emergency beacon from her ship could reach the Stelian research vessel orbiting Mars, but it was still in the wreckage. And the beacon needed a power source stronger than anything Earth technology could provide. Lyra searched the cabin and found an old map. The nearest town was marked, the same one Alex had visited for medicine. It was her only option. Moving carefully through the forest, Lyra used her limited Earth knowledge to stay hidden. Her blue skin would instantly reveal her as non-human, so she wrapped herself in Alex's spare clothes and kept her face covered. By nightfall, she reached the edge of the small town. From the shadows, she watched humans going about their lives. Lights glowed in windows. Cars moved along the main street, a normal evening for them. None knew that beyond their town, government agents held a man prisoner for protecting an alien. Lyra waited until most lights were out, then moved toward the hardware store she had spotted earlier. Breaking in was easy with her knowledge of simple locks. Inside, she collected what she needed: copper wire, batteries, small tools. She left money from Alex's emergency stash on the counter. For 3 days, she worked at the cabin, building a device that could boost the power of her emergency beacon if she could recover it from her ship. The work kept her hands busy, but her mind constantly returned to Alex. Was he hurt? Were they forcing him to reveal her location? On the 4th day, She set out for her crashed ship, moving only at night. The journey took 2 days. When she finally spotted the crash site, her heart sank. Government vehicles surrounded the area. Men in uniform guarded the wreckage. Getting to the beacon seemed impossible. Lyra watched patiently, studying their patterns. A storm moved in, bringing heavy rain and wind. The guards took shelter in their vehicles, leaving only one man watching the ship under a makeshift tent. It was her only chance. Lyra crept closer, using the storm as cover. The lone guard never saw her coming. She touched a pressure point on his neck, a technique her people had developed for subduing animals without harm. The man collapsed, unconscious but unhurt. Inside the broken ship, Lyra moved quickly. The emergency beacon was small, about the size of her hand. She found it still attached to the communication panel and carefully removed it. As she turned to leave, something caught her eye. A secure container, still intact. Inside were her botanical samples and research notes. The mission, she whispered. All the plants she had collected before the crash. The work she had been sent to do. For a moment, she held both items. The beacon that could save her and Alex, and the research that represented her duty to her people. Without hesitation, she left the samples behind and took only the beacon. Back at the cabin, Lyra connected the beacon to her makeshift power device. If it worked, her people would receive her distress call. They would come for her, but would they help a human? Lyra closed her eyes and activated the signal. Please, she whispered to the distant stars. He saved me. Now I need to save him. The device hummed to life, sending her message into the black sky above. 3 days passed after Lyra sent her signal. 3 days of waiting and watching the sky. 3 days of worrying about Alex, held somewhere by those who would see him as a traitor and her as a specimen. On the 4th night, she saw it. A light moving silently across the stars, too fast and precise to be human technology. A Stylian scout ship. Lyra stepped into the small clearing outside the cabin and activated the personal beacon she had saved. The light in the sky changed direction, heading straight for her. The ship landed without a sound, its smooth silver surface reflecting the moonlight. A door opened and 2 figures emerged, Stylian like her, tall and blue-skinned with large silver eyes. Research Specialist Lyra, the taller one said, approaching her. I am Captain Toran. We received your distress signal. Lyra bowed her head in respect. Thank you for coming, Captain. But there isn't much time. A human who helped me has been captured by Earth authorities. We must save him. Captain Toran's expression hardened. That is not our mission. We are here to extract you and remove all evidence of Stylian presence on Earth. He saved my life, Lyra insisted, multiple times. Without him, I would have died from my injuries or been captured. The second Stylian stepped forward. The non-interference directive is clear. We cannot involve ourselves in human affairs. Lyra stood straighter, her voice firm. Then I will stay. I won't leave him to suffer for helping me. Captain Toran studied her for a long moment. You've spent too much time with humans. Their emotional thinking has affected you. Perhaps, Lyra admitted. Or perhaps they've shown me something our people have forgotten. That sometimes rules must bend for what is right. After long discussion, a compromise was reached. The Stylians would help locate Alex, but Lyra would have to go with them afterward. No exceptions. Using technology far beyond Earth's capabilities, they quickly found where Alex was being held, a secret facility deep in the mountains. The rescue was swift and precise. Stylian stun weapons left the human guards unconscious but unharmed. They found Alex in a cell, bruised and exhausted but alive. When he saw Lyra, his battered face broke into a smile. "You're still here," he whispered. "I didn't tell them anything." "I know," she said, helping him stand. "My people have come. We're leaving Earth tonight." The joy in his eyes dimmed. "You're going home." Back at the ship, Captain Toran watched as Lyra tended to Alex's wounds. "The human must have their memory erased," he said. "It's protocol." Lyra's hand stilled. No, I won't allow it. Then what do you propose? He cannot be permitted to reveal our existence. Lyra looked at Alex, their eyes meeting in silent understanding. Then she turned to the captain. I studied Earth's plants and ecosystems for this mission, but I've learned more about humans than any Stelian before me. Their compassion, their courage, things our reports never showed. What are you saying? The captain asked. I'm staying, Lyra said simply. My research will continue, studying how humans and Stelians might one day coexist. Alex will be my guide. Captain Toran was silent for a long time. Finally, he said, the council will never approve. Then don't tell them. Alex suggested, speaking for the first time. Say I died in the crash. Check on us sometimes. See what we learn together. Against all protocol and reason. Captain Toran agreed. He would report the researcher lost. The mission failed. But secretly, he would monitor their progress. As the ship rose into the night sky, Lyra and Alex stood hand in hand outside the cabin. Two beings from worlds apart, yet somehow belonging together. What now? Alex asked. Lyra looked up at the stars, then back to him. Now we build something new. Something neither of our worlds has seen before. Under the vast canopy of stars, a human and an alien began their unexpected journey. Not as separate species, but as two souls who had found each other across the endless void of space.